Good morning, everyone. Been having a little look on YouTube, and there's a huge kind of debate going. Well, it's not even a debate, no. There's a very strong school of thought out there, led by men in general, who are predicting the end times, the end of the world as we know it, climate change catastrophe, doom and gloom, prophetising why we should be preparing for the end of days. It's pretty depressing, really. Well, it's depressing in terms of listening to it initially. And when I say initially, I've listened to it for months. So this doesn't come from some quick reaction. What I'm about to say comes from a very deep thought process as I've been watching and listening and thinking things out in my own head, and as always analysing. So the first thing that strikes me in all of this is that this massive amount of doom and gloom is coming from men. There are very few women up on YouTube talking about this. And the guys who are talking about it are talking with a lot of certainty, bordering on arrogance. I don't agree with them. I don't agree with all their arrogant predictions, and here's why. The female perspective is not only different, it always has been different. Women have historically been the optimists. We have to be optimistic because we carry life. And despite what all the major religions say, we are the creatrix. Guys in the main, males in the main, have been the destroyers, the destructive force, the warmongers, the arrogant leaders of religion. I mean, over the past few years, this has really just begun to sort of stand out like a sore thumb. It's so obvious. It's so obvious what's happening in the world and why our planet is in the mess that it is. And now, because of this goddess almighty mess, the end times are being predicted, and even kind of in a very dark way cheered on. I was listening to Guy McPherson, and he's so cool about it all, and you know, there's so much certainty and kind of arrogance, and yeah, and this is going to happen, and you know, so what, we should all be living, you know, good quality lives now at the end times. Well, you know something, Guy McPherson, I've always tried to live a good quality life, but then so have most women, because we are the ones who bear the children, who raise the children, who grow the food, who keep the home, who keep everything together, who are the optimists in the face of war. Something I noticed actually during the bombing of Gaza a few years ago. when Israeli forces bombed Gaza for, I think it was 2 weeks in total. And there was over 500 children killed in that. And I would tune in every day to see what was happening, and just, it was very difficult to absorb any of that because it was so awful. So I was looking for a sign. I was looking for something that would make me feel a little bit optimistic and all of that. And you know what it was? Do you know what it was? It was the fact that every time there was anything, any video, any cameras there recording, the men who were on the streets were all wearing clean clothes. They were all wearing clean clothes. And at the time, Gaza had its water supplies and everything shut off. So there could only be one answer as to why they were all wearing clean clothes. The women under siege, under bombing, under death and destruction, were still getting on with the little things that had to be done, like washing clothes. So what do I think about all this end times talk and end of the world scenarios and climate change? Well, you know, there's going to be an end of the world for every single one of us. It's called death. It happens. Climate change. It appears to be happening, yes. I have noticed, certain things here. But I've tried to do something to I won't say ameliorate the effects of climate change, but to adapt. So I've done intensive planting here. As with a lot of women, I don't actually think of the end product in terms of myself. I'm thinking outside of myself. I'm thinking of Mother Earth. I'm thinking of how this place will be when I've gone. I've no problem thinking of that. Death doesn't frighten me. It's not something that's ever been in my personal, list of worries. And Celtic peoples who lived here thousands of years ago, death didn't worry them either. For any of you who've read, some of the over 1,000 blogs on my website, there's one there about the transmigration of the soul, because that's what they believed in. But some were in civilization, if we can call it civilization, but certainly over the past few hundred years, the human race has become incredibly arrogant. Over the past couple of thousand years, really. And it began with the importing of Middle Eastern religions into what we call the Western world. Because all those patriarchal religions come from the Middle East. Whether it's, Islam, Christianity, the Hebrew religion, it's all coming from there. And it's kind of weird in a way that's where the West has waged wars and invaded countries, and there's so much horror coming from there today. I don't know why that is. Well, fairly good idea actually. It's called greed, isn't it? It's called greed and the capturing of resources and the enslavement of people in one guise or another. But getting back to these doom and gloom end times, It's very arrogant to project ourselves into the future. It's very arrogant to prophesy. It's very arrogant to say this is how it's going to be, you know, in 10 years. It's very arrogant to start, you know, predicting how Mother Earth is going to deal with any of this. That's my perspective. I don't try to predict anything. I live in the moment. I plant for the future. I try to ensure that my life is worthwhile. And you know, there is a shift in perspective, and it's manifesting in a huge amount of violence against women and violence against Mother Earth. And wherever I'm looking now within social media, there seems to be a predominance of male aggression. And it's why I've come off the permaculture sites, because aggression can be manifest in many ways. The way which is the most insidious is that arrogance. The arrogance of knowing better. The arrogance of speaking in a louder voice. The arrogance of using terminology that diminishes women. I have been appalled looking at some of the comments on videos that I have been watching on YouTube. Videos about the end times and, you know, doom and gloom, prophets of doom, etc. And when you read down through the comments, the women appear to be the use of language against women is quite frankly sickening. Women referred to as pussy, women referred to as bitches. And you know what I find is one of the greatest indicators of how all this is manifesting? The worst word that men can think of to describe the worst of everything is the word cunt. Cunt refers to the part of the anatomy of the female where life comes from. Isn't that terrible? So the arrogance of the arrogance of the end times. The arrogance of the end times. We're not living in end times. We are living our lives, which will each and every one of us have a natural end, in some form or another. How Mother Earth decides to deal with whatever crisis is thrown at her, or whatever crisis is manufactured. And let's face it, this apparent crisis of climate change is very much one of our own doing. But for my part, I'm with the woman of Gaza. In the midst of the doom and the gloom, I'm planting for tomorrow. I'm living my life. I'm doing all the small things. And I'm being very optimistic because I know our species has very little power. Very little power in the face of the Great Mother. So I take my hat off to her, and I keep trying to live as good a life as possible and to be mindful of the greater force. And the greater force for me is not up there in the sky, is not some unseen male god. The greater force is what's in front of me now, all around me. What you can see, what you can hear,